As you just saw there, my name is James West. I run a consultancy in the UK that specializes, I'm a social psychologist by training, but I specialize in what most people call behavioral economics, or nudge theory, or change architecture. I've called my presentation today Designing Behavior, or Designing for Behavior. And I want to give you an analogy about the kind of things I want to talk about. So I'd like you to remember this as you go forward. If there's one thing you take away from today, it will probably be this thought. When we design things in the physical world, we understand that we're limited. Okay? We don't design chairs that are too small for us to sit on. We don't design glasses that are too small for our hands. Okay? We don't design stairs that people can't walk up. So we understand that we have physical limitations. But when it comes to our minds, and when it comes to our behaviors, we think we're unlimited. Okay? We think we can do anything. And what I would like to demonstrate as we go through this is actually we can't. That our minds are just as limited as our bodies, and that in terms of financial products, HR products, recruitment products, etc., we need to think carefully about how people actually behave and design products and services that fit around behavior. Does that make sense to everybody? Good. So, 3 things I want to cover off today. Actually, before I do that, how many people have managed to do the quiz? So I put a behavioral quiz on there, so about a quarter of the room, etc. I'll be giving you all the answers to the quiz as we go through, and there'll be a presentation, a prize, for those of you who have completed it and completed it successfully. So 3 things I want to talk about today. The myths of customer decision-making. So we all think we're rational, we all think we behave in certain ways, and I want to outline the 3 key ways that we're wrong in how we think people make decisions. Number 2, I want you to understand how people actually make decisions. So what are some of the factors that go into the decisions we make every day? We wake up in the morning and we think that we make decisions. We think we put our clothes on, I'm going to choose this for breakfast, I'm going to do this, etc., etc. But actually we take a lot of things from the environment, cues from our friends, cues from messages that we receive as we go through the day, etc., etc. And the third thing I want to do is give you some examples of how you can apply behavioral science research to improve some of the qualities of your products and services. Okay, so some of my work has actually been in debt management, getting people to sign up to and stick to debt management plans. I've done a lot of work for the UK government, looking at applying the research, and also a lot of work in the utilities sector in the UK. A couple of other things. I've been told quite often that I talk very quickly, so I'm trying to be quite slow and leave a lot of pauses. And secondly, this all comes quite naturally to me now. I realize we're going to go through quite a lot of slides here. I like a lot of data, so there's graphs and all sorts of things in here. Don't worry if you don't understand it. I can bore anybody for a long time on topics of psychology, so find me at some other point during the conference. There's a chance for questions tomorrow as well. And obviously you can get the slides and have a look for yourself. I can also recommend some books and some other things that you might want to look at in terms of understanding the content better. So, first thing we're going to do, 3 decision-making myths. Number 1, we think that information persuades us. Okay, we think if we gave our customer or our client more information, they would do what we wanted them to do. So we pile on the information, and actually, information is not persuasive at all, or very rarely, apart from very basic information. Number 2, we think that if we can only win hearts and minds, if we can change the way people think, if we can change their attitude, that will change their behavior. The truth is actually the reverse. If you change people's behavior, they will usually bring their attitudes in line with what they're doing. And number 3, we think that if we ask somebody what persuades them, they'll be able to tell us. And as we go through the rest of my session, I hope to convince you that actually we have no idea what persuades us. Quite often when we ask people, what is it that you did? They can't tell us why they've done what they've done. This behavioral economist, Dan Ariely, has a way of starting off his conferences. He says, I'm here to talk about irrationality. Not yours, obviously, everybody else's. So bear that in mind as we go through. This doesn't actually apply to you. Right. So the first one, the first myth, information is persuasive. So I want to talk to you about motivated reasoning. Okay? This is by far and away the most depressing finding in social sciences in the last 10 years. Okay? So here's what happened. They got 1,200 people and they asked them to complete a maths test. Okay? The maths test lasted for about an hour. Okay? Before they began, they were given a test to see what their numeracy skills were like. And then they're asked about their political leanings. Okay? So what kind of things did they believe? Were they strongly Republican or were they strongly Democrat? This was actually done at Yale University. As they started the paper, they were given this question. Okay, there's a new skin cream product. Here's the results from our testing. So in the patients group who used the new skin cream, 223 people got better and 75 people got worse. Patients who did not use the skin cream, 107 people got better and 21 people got worse. Question you have to answer, people who use the skin cream are more likely to get better than those who didn't. Hands up if you think that's true. Well done, it is a trick question. No one? Show of hands. Hands up if you think number 1 is true. One gentleman there. 2. Okay, getting there. Okay, number 2. People who use the skin cream were more likely to get worse than those who didn't. Hand up if you believe that is true. No? Okay, not the most responsive audience in terms of... Has everyone got hands? If you could just put them up for me. Yeah, good. Okay, you do have hands. That's nice. I'm going to make you stand up later, and I'm going to wait for everybody to do it. The answer to the question is that the skin cream doesn't work. The reason the skin cream is ineffective, 3 people get better when they don't use the... only 3 people get better for everyone who gets worse, but in the condition where they don't have skin cream, or they don't use the skin cream, 5 people get better for every person who got worse. And you just have to do the ratios, okay? It's a trick, it's a heuristic, and I'll talk about heuristics in a minute. You see the big number, and you think, oh, they must have got better. The good news is people who are highly numerate got the answer right, okay? So that's good, that's important. As they went through the rest of the paper, they found another question. This question has exactly the same data as the original question, but this time it's framed as a political problem. Okay? It was a problem about abortion, capital punishment, it was a problem about refugees, etc., etc. Okay? This time, if the answer was against their political beliefs, they got the answer wrong, even if they had already calculated it beforehand. Okay? If that doesn't deeply concern you and depress you, then I haven't explained it properly. So think about it like this. Even if you're a statistics professor, if you're an actuary, if you're someone who is really good at numbers, politics will always beat the mathematics. You do not think logically. You have all the information you need to solve the problem, but you will still get the answer wrong. This session was supposed to be on something's going wrong with the world today. I think that may have something to do with it. Everyone understand? Giving people more information does not help. People don't respond rationally. People don't respond in the way that you would expect them to if you give them all the right information. A friend of mine is a psychology professor, and he gave that study to his graduate students. And his graduate students were appalled. And they said, oh, how are we going to convince anyone of anything? How are we going to make sure that everyone knows I'm right? And as he said, I think they missed the point. How do we know that we're right? That's the real problem here. Myth number 2, attitudes change behavior. Okay? So we think that if we can change people's minds, if we do it, get them to think differently or have a different attitude, then they will behave in a different way. Again, not true. All of the evidence seems to say that if we change someone's behavior, they're more likely to change their attitude to bring it in line. That's called cognitive dissonance. That's for another course. What I'm talking about here is moral licensing. You've all done it, okay? You do something good, and then you do something bad. I've been to the gym, therefore I'll have that extra donut. I worked late last night, so I'm just going to surf the internet in my pajamas all day. I haven't had a drink all week, so I'm going to get drunk this weekend. The final one is one from personal experience. I gave up smoking and didn't go to the gym anymore. You can probably see how that's working out for me. So actually, in terms of changing people's behavior, customers, staff, etc., you're better off targeting the behavior, not the attitude. Everybody with me? Good. Number 3, we think we know what persuades us. Okay? There's a lot of actually alcohol-related things in my presentation, which probably tells you more about me than I wanted to. Anyway, you'll find out in the bar tonight anyway. So we go to buy a bottle of wine. Okay, you've got a dinner party, you're seeing some friends, so you think, I'm going to go and choose some wine. So you might think, I'll get one with a cork, because that's much more classy than those horrible plastic corks. If there's a picture of an old building on it, people love old buildings. That means it's a quality thing. If it's got ye olde writing, a bit of sort of Gothic script, that looks nice. And pick up something unusual. People like that. Okay, you can show off your wine talent, your wine buying talent. So there's an interesting study about this. Okay, so there was a wine shop, and one day in the wine shop they played French music all day, and people bought 3 times more French wine. The next day they played German music, and people bought twice as much German wine. When they went outside, a psychologist leaped out from behind a bush and said, why did you buy the wine? Ooh. Why did you buy the wine you bought? It's gone, has it? Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Excellent. So the psychologist leaping out of the bush, I think that's where I was up to, wasn't I? Yes. And they said, why did you buy the wine that you bought? You can probably guess how many people said, oh, it was the music playing in the shop. Nobody. We don't understand what persuades us. If you ask people, they just don't know. Okay? So, the 3 great myths. So the first quiz question. In 1900, estimates of premature deaths, people who didn't reach the average age caused by factors within their control, so their smoking, their diet, their exercise, etc., was about 10%. In 2016, what did you think the percentage was? 44%. Okay? If we were rational, if we behaved in the way that we expect, we have all the information, we know we shouldn't drink too much, we know we shouldn't smoke, we know you shouldn't do all of those things that are bad for us, and yet 44% of people in Western countries are dying from things they could have avoided if they had changed their behavior. Make sense? Sorry, I'm used to smaller audiences, so I ask a lot of questions. So just treat them as if they're rhetorical. Second quiz question. I don't know if anyone knows, there's a company called O-Power, and they look at how to get people to reduce their energy consumption. So in the initial experiment, they got a community in California, and they asked them, of these attempts to persuade your behavior, which one will work? Okay, we'll give you an environmental appeal, we'll tell you how you can save money, or we'll tell you what your neighbors are doing. Everybody thought that saving money would help, they thought that giving environmentalists will help, they thought that telling me what my neighbors are doing, that's not going to make any sense. Why would that affect my behavior? What actually happened, in fact, was when they ran the experiments, that was the most successful strategy at persuading people to reduce their energy consumption. It's now fairly popular, a lot of American states do it. It's also come to the UK now, so they're doing work I know in Birmingham, because I did this presentation, and somebody brought in their electricity bill the next day. So, now we know we don't make decisions in the way we think we do. What are the ways that we do make decisions? I'm not going to go through all of these. There are a lot of them. Most of our decision-making is unconscious. We don't even know what's happening. For those who've read any Daniel Kahneman, we're mostly system 2 thinkers. We're not system 2 thinkers. We're system 1 thinkers. Cultural signals, our social identity, what our neighbors are doing, who we believe we are, what our politics are. Environmental triggers, so all of you are behaving in a certain way because the chairs are a certain way, because the temperature's a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. And also, we're very emotional creatures. Okay, most of our decisions are based on our feelings, on our emotions. Okay, the psychologist Dan Gilbert puts it really nicely. I think he said, we're not rational, we're rationalizers. We make a decision, and then we spend a lot of time justifying it. And we get that the wrong way around. Just want to quickly point out heuristics. Okay, it's a word you hear a lot in this literature. It's a word you hear a lot from people like me in presentations. All it means is simple rules of thumb. Okay, simple ways of understanding the world. We run it unconsciously through, and then we make our decision based on it. So there was an example earlier when I was talking about the study with your politics. So when you looked at that problem, you saw the big number, and you thought, big number must be good, therefore skin cream works. That's a heuristic. A very simple way of understanding the world so that we don't have to put too much rational thinking into it. Okay. Okay, so here's a way that we understand the world that is usually beyond our understanding, our conscious understanding. In a study of used cars, people were given one of the offers below, And after receiving the offer, they had the option to respond with a counteroffer. Which of these prices received the substantially lowest counteroffer? The answer was 2,134. The reason being, when we see an incredibly precise number, we seem to think, oh, somebody put a lot of work into that price, therefore it must be right. Okay? So they've done this study in sales of houses, in used cars, etc., and they always find the same thing. The more precise the number, the less likely people are to try and respond with a counteroffer. Okay? So it's a simple price signal or an anchor. So, if we want to design for behavior, what are some of the things that we can do to help our customers, to help our staff, to design products and services and internal systems that actually work for people rather than against our own thinking? Okay? So I'm going to do 4. There are a lot more, trust me. These are the 4 that I think are easiest to understand and that you'll probably see in the world around you everywhere. Defaults. We tend to do what is already chosen for us. We tend to do what the default option is in any situation. We absolutely hate making choices. Choices are bad. It makes us unhappy. Contrast effects. The things that we see first have a disproportionate impact on what we see next. Okay? A classic example is anchoring. You see a big number, and then all other numbers cluster around it. Number 3 is loss aversion. We really, really, really don't like to think we're missing out on stuff. Number 4 is social proof. We like to do what everybody else around us is doing, particularly if we strongly identify with that particular social group. Who went for pizza last night? Let's show those hands again. Anyone eat a pizza last night? Nobody had pizza. Oh, one person. Okay. Yeah, the pizza parlors of Krakow are slightly worried at this conference right now. Right, so you walk into a pizza restaurant. Some customers are told you can have a large pizza for $30. It's got 12 toppings on it, and you can remove as many toppings as you want. Other people walk in, they're told you can have a margarita pizza for $17, and you can add as many toppings as you like. Here's our list. You would think it makes no difference. You just take off the toppings you don't want, or you just add the toppings you do want. What actually happens, the average spend when you have to remove toppings is $25. The average spend when you add toppings is $19. What happens? People take 2 or 3 off the main option, and they get bored of making the choice, and so they just go with the default. They go with what was already chosen for them by the pizza shop. Okay? Same in the other case. They add 3 toppings, and then they get bored of adding things because making choices is difficult, so they just go with the 3 toppings. So if you're in a pizza restaurant, if you're running a pizza restaurant, if you have family who run pizza restaurants, get them to take the toppings off. Making choices is very difficult. The more we have to make them, the harder it becomes. Therefore, we are more likely to choose nothing and just do what the default option is. Very famous study of organ donation. Okay? You've all seen this before. You've all seen this on websites. It's extremely annoying. You have to pay very careful attention to see whether you're being subscribed to a newsletter or whether you have to tick the box to unsubscribe from the newsletter. Countries that have this tick box have almost 100% organ donation rates. Companies that have the opposite tick box, we will give you permission for your organs, have somewhere around 20 to 25% organ donation. What happens? People walk in, they look at the box, they think, I don't have to do anything, and they move on. Sometimes doing nothing means that they're enrolled in the organ donation scheme. Sometimes doing nothing means that you're not. So how you design the form, what you make the default, has a huge impact on how people behave afterwards. Because that's really annoying, and because nobody likes it, well, I don't like it. Oh, sorry, 4 times more enrollments if you do an opt-out default. Another example you can use is, this is what the UK now uses. It's an organ donation enhanced choice. So instead of letting them pass by the thing without putting anything in the box, you force people to actually make the choice. Even that, which is not as powerful as the original default option, will still give you twice as many enrollments as just an opt-in or as an opt-out option. Defaults. Right. The second one, contrast effects. Okay? Don't know if anybody's been to the UK recently. If you may have dined in a restaurant chain called Carluccio's. Sound familiar to anybody? No? Okay. Yeah, one person. The British person. Nice to see you. Okay. So you can walk into an Italian restaurant in the UK and you can buy a scooter for £2,771, which is odd. Why would you want to go into an Italian restaurant to buy a scooter? Okay, there's something very strange about that. Why is it there? Okay, so what you think is nobody buys the scooter and you just order your meal as normal. But actually, that's not what happens. Nobody buys a scooter in an Italian restaurant. Everyone does it and chooses what they want to eat. That's not what people do. People still don't buy the scooter in the Italian restaurant, but what they do is order the things around it more often. Okay? Because suddenly, all the other prices compared to £2,771 look very reasonable by comparison. You can change the way people experience anything by structuring the first thing they experience beforehand. And that's a contrast effect. Okay? Here we go. I told you there'd be more wine. So, have a look at the wine list tomorrow, and then you can suggest some improvements to the hotel, should you wish to. What usually happens is we go in, we look at a bottle of wine, unless you are a wine connoisseur or you have very strong preferences about the wine you drink. You look at the first one, and you go, nah, I'm not a cheapskate. So you buy wine A or B. So most people, when they sit down, if they don't have a strong preference, they'll buy wine A or B. Okay? So what would happen, do you think, if you reverse the wine list? So this time, the most expensive wine is at the top, and the cheapest wine is at the bottom. Basically, we do exactly the same thing. We look at the top one, we go, no, that's too expensive, so we buy the one that's in this case, 3 or 4 down. On average, that's about £2 more per bottle that most people will spend in your restaurant. So just by reordering the way that people are experiencing the menu, you can get £2 extra from almost every sale of wine. Because people are weird. Speaking of people being very weird, how about this one? So this was in the quiz. Participants are given a list of items and asked to write down the last 2 digits of their telephone number at the top of the auction. They then go through and they put prices down for each of the items and how much they would be willing to pay. Do you think that the telephone number had a difference? Yes, people pay about 25 to 50% more if the last 2 digits of their telephone number are a high number. It's what's called a price anchor. Okay? We look at the initial price and then we set all of the variables against that initial price, even if the number is completely unrelated, which, again, is slightly terrifying. Everybody stand up, please. I tried to do that one as an order. Okay. I would like you to sit down when you are willing to take this bet. Okay? There will be a series of bets, and when it feels right, and it's definitely a feeling, I want you to sit down. So I'm going to flip a coin. It's completely unbiased. I'm not trying to rip you off here. I'm trying to demonstrate something. I'm going to flip a coin. If it lands heads, I'm going to give you £10. If it lands tails, you give me £10. Sit down if you're willing to take that bet. Hey, there's the least risk-averse person in the room. Congratulations, sir. Okay, nobody else? 50-50, I'll give you £10, you give me £10. Nope. Okay, so let's try this again. So ignore that one, that's never happened. I'm just approaching you on the street like some strange random psychologist and saying, I'm going to flip a coin. If it lands heads, I'll give you £15. If it lands tails, you give me £10. 50-50, oh, Sean, thank you. Couple of people, excellent. Right, anybody else? I'll give you £15, you give me £10, 50-50 chance. No, all right then, ignore that, that's never happened. Let's try this again. I come forward, right. I'm going to give you a bet. I'm going to flip a coin. If it lands heads, I'll give you £20. If it lands tails, you give me £10. Who's willing to take the bet now? £20, double your money. Thank you. Right. Okay then. So for the final time, I'm going to walk forward and I'm going to say to you, I'm going to flip a coin. If it lands heads, I give you £25. If it lands tails, you give me £10. Who is willing to take the bet? Does it feel right? Does it feel right? Oh, bingo. I think we've exactly matched the study pretty much. So that's nice. Okay, so everybody sit down. Thank you very much for your participation. So apart from the gentleman who sat down in the first round, wherever he went, there you are. What you all did is profoundly strange, okay? What you did is so profoundly strange, in fact, that the psychologist who discovered it, a psychologist called Daniel Kahneman, won the Nobel Prize in economics. So think about that for a minute. A psychologist won the Nobel Prize in economics. Because what he's talking about is loss aversion, okay? Around 70% of people will accept a bet when their readings are roughly 2 to 2.5 their losses. That's pretty much what we got in this room. Of all of the techniques I'm showing you today, this seems to be the least influenced by culture, the least influenced by different psychology. Everybody, regardless of culture, seems to do this in exactly the same way. What they do, the feeling of loss is much more painful to us than having a comparative gain. Okay? You didn't think, oh, I could win 10 pounds here. That's brilliant. You thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Okay? And until you get to about double or 2.5, very few people will actually sit down. Okay? If you want to, you can go home and experiment with this on your children. Okay? Give them their pocket money at the start of the week and take £1 away every time they're naughty. That's a much more painful thing to do than to actually give them less money later on in the week. Okay? We're very attached to the things that we actually already have. In the 1980s, just after he released his one of the best-selling psychology books of all time, the social psychologist Robert Cialdini was approached by Bose. And they had a big ad campaign. They still use some of this. You may have seen it. Does that look familiar to everybody? And they said to him, this ad campaign is not very successful. What would you change that would make it more successful? He made one change and doubled the sales. Hear what you've been missing. Okay? Losses feel more painful to us than comparative gains. It's not getting a good experience, it's missing out on having a good experience. Another example, I did some work for a breast cancer charity. We were trying to get people to turn up for breast self-examination screenings. This was the message that they had been putting out. By doing breast self-examination now, you can learn what your normal healthy breasts feel like so that you'll be better prepared to notice any small abnormal changes that might occur as you get older. Let's see what happens if we change the language. By not doing breast self-examination now, you will not learn what your normal healthy breasts feel like, so you'll be ill prepared to notice any small abnormal changes that might occur as you get older. People turning up to the workshop, about a 20% increase. Small change, one sentence, big impact. Right, the final technique, like I said, there are many more, but this is the final one I'm going to teach today, and then there's a little activity to see who's going to replace me as the behavioral economist in the room. Social proof. Okay. This was a campaign to get students to reduce their drinking. It was done by the University of Pennsylvania about 15 years ago. I had a friend who did a replication of this at Durham University in the UK with very similar results. All they said was most Penn students drink moderately when they party, and you'll see over there, 4 or fewer is the campaign slogan. Okay? What you think happens is, well, they're students. They just ignored it, and they went on drinking. What actually happened, there was a 30% reduction in drinking on campus. And I love this, as measured by police call-outs. What's going on? We decide what is appropriate for us to do in a situation by trying to figure out what other people are doing in that same situation. So earlier I showed you the O-Power study, getting people to reduce energy consumption. Okay, this is social proof. That's what it is. If my neighbors are reducing their energy consumption, then I feel like I should as well. So, if you've heard of any of these studies, this will probably be the one. It was started in the UK. It's now been demonstrated in quite a lot of countries. I saw a recent one where they did exactly the same thing in Guatemala. So, if you haven't paid your taxes in the UK, you usually get a really nasty letter saying, pay your taxes now or we're going to take you to prison. That gets about a 60% response rate. Okay, so about 60% of people respond to that letter and pay their taxes. So some psychologists went to the small English town of Northampton, and they thought, right, maybe we can improve these letters to make people more likely to pay their taxes. Okay? So they tried three things. One, 75% of people in the UK pay their taxes on time. Number two, 75% of people in your postcode, and then listed out the postcode, pay their taxes on time. And the final one, 75% of people in Northampton pay their taxes on time. Watch the magic of social proof. Social norm in the UK, so you get a 3 or 4% increase. Social norm in your postcode, a 79% increase. Social norm in your town, because the town is similar, we have feelings about our towns, 82.9% increase. Just that study alone estimated to be worth about £1 million extra to revenue in terms of clearance rates. And additional taxes, not having to send out third letters, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? One sentence. Sorry, £1 billion. Thank you, Sean. No, sorry, if that's scaled up across the UK, it's estimated to be £1 billion in additional revenue. For those of you who are from countries where tax paying is not the norm, it won't work for you. Try something different. Fortunately, in the UK, there's a very strong tax-paying norm. You can only work with the norms that already exist in society. You can't really create them yourself. Right. So what I want to do, I thought we would be in tables, so I was going to do a table activity. Instead, I'm just going to get you to do it in pairs, okay? This is social proof after all, so you can have a chat to the person next to you. So if you go to your hotel room tonight, you will notice that there is a sign like this in your bathroom, okay? And this is trying to convince you to do something. This is an attempt to persuade you to recycle your towels. You can tell me later if you believe this is a successful appeal or not, because what I'm going to get you to do is to use that principle of social proof. Okay? You saw in the tax study, 75% of people in your town pay their taxes on time. Okay? We tend to do what other people around us are doing, especially if we feel very similar to them. So I want you to use that information to come up with a slogan. What would you replace on this card to make it more likely that people recycle their towels? Okay? Everyone understand what I'm asking? So, you've got 5 minutes to come up with a thing. We'll bring some microphones around and we'll get a couple of ideas back, and then we'll see if anyone has cracked how to get people to recycle their towels. Person next to you, or in groups of 3 if it's possible, 5 minutes, just have a chat, come up with some messages for me. He knows the answer. Don't let him. Okay. One more minute just to finish your conversations, and then we'll go and take some ideas from the audience. I'll know who my competition is in a minute. Okay. Could I have a volunteer to read out the message you just created over here? Thank you very much. Thank you for going first.
Hi.
Hello.
Our message is, if you need your towel replaced daily, please drop it into the hamper by reception every morning between 7 and 8 a.m.
Actually, it is social proof, because what you're doing is you're getting people to walk past and show everybody else in the hotel that they're recycling their towel. Exactly. So in some ways it is social proof. A different form of it, but yeah, very clever, very good.
Guilt you into it.
I'm watching you. Somebody else? At the back there, sorry, thank you.
We went for the direct approach. We said recycle your towels or lose them.
So recycle your towels or?
Lose them.
Lose them. That is a very effective loss aversion message. The loss you'll get is all of your customers. But yeah, that would be an effective loss aversion message, although probably not appropriate in this particular context. But yeah, very good, very good. This is a very creative audience. Go on, we have one at the front here, if that's okay.
I'm looking for a new job. 75% of our guests in our hotel recycle their towels. What will you be doing for the environment?
Bingo. That's one of them. Yeah, absolutely. So that is a social proof message, and that's actually one of the messages that was tried. Excellent. Anyone do better than that? That's pretty good, but there's one better.
Yeah. I've got something similar in terms of percentage. So 75% of business people visiting us choose not to change the towels.
Yeah, that's really good. You're absolutely on the right track with that. It's maybe a bit too specific, because what would non-business people do? But you're absolutely right. It's a many similar others message. So very good. Excellent. Yeah. Anyone want to have a crack at the full answer? No? Go on, one more.
Dear guest, by not recycling the towels, you are hurting the environment. 90% of our guests, of the guests in our hotel, use towels at least twice.
So you've gone with loss aversion and social proof. Yeah. Excellent.
Please help us protect the environment, support our world, and join your fellow neighbors, neighbor hotel guests.
You've gone for a treatise on towel recycling. Yeah, very good. And you've used it. Yeah, well done. Absolutely. Okay, so here's what the experiment tried. There were 3 different messages that they put onto door hangers over the toilets. Number 1, the standard environmental appeal. You'll be helping the environment if you recycle your towels. Number 2, which is almost exactly what you got here, 75% of guests in this hotel recycled their towels. Number 3, everyone just prepare yourselves to be deeply creeped out. The final message, the many similar others message, 75% of people in your room number 118, recycled their towels at least once during their stay. Once you realize that, you wonder what else they were doing in the room, but that's beside the point, because bizarrely, that was the result they got. Okay, so this was done in Arizona at the Holiday Inn Group. It was done all over the state. And they got pretty much a 20%, almost a 20% increase in people recycling their towels at least once during their stay. So the correct answer was 75% of people who stay in this room, and then the room number, recycle their towels every day. I just saw this was recently redone in Slovenia, I think, and they got exactly the same result. So it's been fairly well replicated across the world, this result, for that message in hotels. So again, should you wish to grab your thing tonight and make some recommendations to the hotel staff, I'm sure they'd be very happy to hear from you. Right, I'm going to take a couple of questions in a minute, but only 2. There's more chance tomorrow. A couple of quiz questions to get through first. Researchers in Canada looked at neighborhoods where somebody had won the lottery. They discovered that the neighbors of lottery winners filed for bankruptcy more often than if someone in their area hadn't won the lottery. Why is that? social proof. We compare ourselves to the people around us. They're suddenly spending more money. I feel the need as well. The effect was so strong, for every £1,000 that someone won in the lottery, that meant a 2% increase in your chances of going bankrupt. Because you're such a lovely, handsome, attractive, intelligent audience, I'm going to give you a bonus technique. Okay? So this is a technique of commitment. I fell for this not so long ago myself. I went into Starbucks, and the lady behind the bar said, "Would you like to buy our new Ethiopian blend coffee?" And I said, "Yes." And then they said, "That'll be an extra 40p." And I went, "Okay." And I walked away and thought, hang on, if she'd asked me those questions the other way round, I would have said no. But because I'd already verbally committed, I'd said yes. I then felt the need to go through and do what I'd said. So that's a commitment technique. Again, you'll see them quite often. I'm not even sure if they train at the Starbucks, but she certainly got me. So there's a weird thing about people being honest. We want people to be more honest. We want them to tell us what they really think. And we do it in different ways. So if you go to court and you're a witness, they will ask you to put your hand on the Bible and swear an oath. And they do that before you give your testimony. Okay? But when you sign a contract, you want people to be honest, okay? But you get them to sign at the end, after they've already given their testimony. That's weird. Okay? Why would we do it in two completely different ways? So some psychologists wondered which one was more effective. It probably won't surprise you to learn that when a survey was sent out to a load of car insurance firm sent out a load of renewal forms. Okay? In one version, they asked people to sign at the top of the form and then complete it as if they were being honest. In the second one, they did it as normal and completed all their details and then signed at the bottom. When they got these hundreds of thousands of forms back, they discovered that the people who signed at the top reported 10% more mileage. The people who signed at the top were more honest because they had already made the commitment to be honest in advance. So, you're all thinking about your forms now, aren't you? Right, what can I send out? It's a very simple, easy to do one, but I've still never convinced any government department to do it. I have 5 minutes for questions, and then I've got some final slides just to lead into the next session. So did anybody quickly want to ask me a question that's not too complicated or about ethics? I'll answer ethics questions tomorrow, that's fine, but that's what I usually get. Sorry?
What about gut instinct and decision making?
Sorry, what about?
Gut instinct.
Gut instinct, that is how we make decisions. We make decisions with our gut, we don't make it with our heads.
Okay,
But the gut feel comes from all of those other things we talked about. Your upbringing, the social things around you, your politics, your environment, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm basically saying is we think with our guts, not with our heads, but we assume when we design products and services that we think with our heads, but we don't. Anybody else? Okay. Sure? This is your final, well, not your final opportunity, but don't miss out on the opportunity to ask me questions while I'm standing up on stage. No. Your neighbors are all asking questions. You should as well. Okay. Like I said, feel free to come up and talk to me during breaks or over dinner or whatever. I do enjoy talking about this, as you've probably noticed already. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions, or if you have things in your own businesses you want to talk about, I'm happy to provide some free advice as well. So, after we have a break, and I think we're almost running up to the time. Yeah, 4 minutes, that's perfect. The next session will be a panel session, and it will be the Global Collections panel, so you'll be looking at the state of finance in different parts of the world. I thought as a psychologist, there's not much I can bring to that particular discussion, but what I can do is tell you if you work in different cultures, there are different ways of influencing people. Okay, so our cultural styles and cultural patterns have quite a big impact on how we should go about influencing managers, staff, etc. So has anybody ever worked for Citibank? No? Everyone know who they are? Okay. They certainly did. I don't know if they still do. They used to have a very unusual policy. And the policy was that no matter where in the world they were, 80% of the senior managers had to be from that country. Okay? Which actually, as you can imagine, leads to some very interesting ideas for research. So some psychologists from Harvard University went out to all of the Citibank offices around the world, and they sent them a series of case studies saying, on what basis would you help this person? Okay, what were the factors that you would consider when you're granting somebody's request, etc. Okay, and from that, they got all the data, and they got 4 broad categories of how to influence people from different cultures. Would you all like to see the results? Yes? Okay, good, because I have them. In the US, the UK, and Canada, what has this requester done for me recently? Do I owe them a favor? Okay, that's actually reciprocity. We haven't talked about that today. In Asia, so China, Hong Kong, India, Singapore, is this requester connected to a member of my small group, especially someone of high rank? So that's authority messages and social proof. Mediterranean countries, is this requester a friend of mine or connected to one of my friends? And in Germany and Scandinavia, you can read it for yourself. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed myself. I hope you have as well.